Arnold.
All right. Welcome to Dean Arnold Podcast. It is August 9th. And we're going to talk about some things that's interesting. We had a podcast. First, let me just say I'm running for Congress. Vote for me in November. Give to DeanArnoldForCongress.com. I'm bringing sanity to an insane world. Like, share, subscribe, comments, and questions. Welcome. Now, it's August 9th. We had a podcast a few days ago about, how, are you sure it's August 9th? Because back in the 1700s, they erased 11 days on the calendar. They woke up on, let's say, Tuesday, February 2nd, and they woke up on like Wednesday morning, February 13th, for all sorts of crazy, strange astrological, mathematical reasons. And now we're just going to talk about something kind of similar, but a little different, which is the days of the week. All right. I'm not going to tell you what day of the week it is today. It might be Sunday, might be Monday, might be Tuesday. I'm not going to tell you. I got reasons why I'm not telling you. I want to use this podcast possibly next year, and I don't want to date it by saying the day of the week. Not that I'll succeed, but Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Okay, what is all this? Where does it come from? I mean, this is a very, very common, big part of our lives thing. And we've been doing it for 1,000 or 2 years or more. And, how do you come up with this? Who came up with it first? What do these words mean? Why is it rotate every 7 days? I'll talk less about that, but a pretty obvious one is based on the Hebrew Bible, book of Genesis. But anyway, that's what we're going to talk about today. It's a fairly fascinating topic, in my opinion. So we'll just kind of see where it's coming from. We got some Norse gods involved. We got some Roman gods involved. We got some Babylonian stuff involved. We got some astrological stuff involved, and planets, and this, that, and the other. So there's a lot of things involved in this. It's a very funky thing. And so let's just learn about it a little bit, have a little fun, and that's about it. All right, first, scripture of the day. Okay, this is Matthew 17. It's the story of there was this father who had this son who was epileptic, and a demon would cause him to go throw himself into a fire, try to kill himself. And of course, he's distraught. He brings it to the disciples. The disciples can't cast it out. Jesus says, "Bring it to me. Bring him here to me." And he rebukes the demon. The disciples come to him and say, "Why couldn't we do it?" Because they'd had many other experiences where they were successful in casting out the demon. And Jesus says, if you have faith of a mustard seed, which is the smallest of seeds, you can say to this mountain, "Move from here to there," and it'll move. However, this kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting. Okay. So I just want to bring this up. We're not going to do an epistle today because I got an Old Testament passage for you, sort of, kind of. This only comes about by prayer and fasting. So I just wanted to mention this because there is some asceticism involved in this thing we're doing right now in the kingdom of God. We read in all these saint stories where they have wonder-working powers. They do cast out demons. They work miracles. They have clairvoyance. But almost to a man, they're pretty ascetic. They're fasting. They're praying. They're not sleeping much. They're doing a lot of things, afflicting the body so that their soul and spirit has more power. So just something to think about. It's part of the formula that we're dealing with right now, and we'll see it again and again in the saint stories. Now, I did have a sermon here recently from Deacon John at my church, and he put a little more emphasis on the faith as a mustard seed part. He said that the prayer and fasting really it makes you feel smaller. You don't want to be all big. Oh, I'm a big man because I pray and fast. No, you're actually a littler man because you don't eat as much. You fast. You're feeling kind of weak. You pray because you have to depend on God and not yourself. And at that point, if you just have the faith of a mustard seed, you can make it happen. So that's an interesting take as well. Regardless, let's cast out some demons and let's bring righteousness into this world. What do you say? All right. Now let's move into a different thing. This is a passage from the Wisdom of Solomon in the Old Testament. We read this in church, in the Orthodox Church, all the time. We probably read this passage and a couple others from the Wisdom of Solomon, arguably more than any other passage in the Bible. And I think it's because we have all these saints who've been tortured and martyred. Got to figure it out. Got to work through it. What's going on here? Well, this passage and a couple verses from another one I'll show you start to get at it. Are you ready? But the souls of the righteous are in the hand of God, and no torment will ever touch them. In the eyes of the foolish, they seem to have died, and their departure was thought to be affliction, and their going from us to be their destruction. But they are at peace. For though in the sight of men they were punished, their hope is full of immortality. They've been disciplined a little, and they will receive great good, because God tested them and found them worthy of himself, tried in a fire, sparks running through stubble. Verse 8, they will govern nations and rule over peoples, and the Lord will reign over them forever. All right, so, obtain a better resurrection. Like we've talked about from Hebrews 11. So everybody looks at these people who tortured and get killed and like, oh, man, bad hand, unlucky, cursed. Stay away from them. But God's saying, no. These are very blessed people. And one more passage that reinforces this. Verse 7 from Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 4. But the righteous man, though he die early, will be at rest. For old age is not honored by length of time, nor measured by number of years, but understanding is gray hair for men, and a blameless life is ripe old age. There was one who pleased God and was loved by him. He was caught up lest evil change his understanding, or guile deceive his soul. For the fascination of wickedness obscures what is good, and roving desire perverts the innocent mind. Being perfected in a short time, he fulfilled long years, for his soul was pleasing to the Lord. Therefore, he took him quickly from the midst of wickedness. Yet the people saw and did not understand. Okay, there you go. So if you're a young person and you're really pleasing to God, God's roving around, and he's like, I think I'm going to snatch that guy up now, because the older you get, the worse it gets, and the perversion and the love of money and all that stuff in the third parable that gets choked out by thorns, you're at risk of that. And so I might take this righteous young man early. And so it wasn't because he was bad. It was because he was good. It's hard for us to think that way, but once you get to eternity, I guess the difference between living 20 years and 80 years isn't that big of a deal. Once you're like a million years into eternity. But anyway, those are two important passages that we read on a regular basis. And so I want to make sure we got to them today. In fact, see all those scripture passages listed there? That's because we're in a feast time. We had the Feast of Transfiguration Friday morning, as you know, because we talked about it. And then we have another feast coming up Saturday morning called the Dormition, or sometimes it's called the Assumption of Mary, the Theotokos, where her body was assumed by heaven. So her body is not on earth anymore. That's a big feast. But that 2-week period with those two feasts is called the Dormition fast, and we're in the middle of it. It's one of the reasons why that gospel is listed today on the calendar, is because prayer and fasting. Okay, that's all good. Saint of the day. is the Apostle Matthias. And I find this interesting. Okay, he was one of the 70. So Jesus had the 12 disciples, then he had the 70 disciples, and Matthias was one of the 70. They were sent out 2 by 2 to, heal and cast out demons and that sort of thing. And don't take any money, just let God provide for you. So he was one of those guys. The first thing it tells us here is that he was born in Bethlehem of the tribe of Judah, which is interesting because the thing you may, if you're a Bible person, the thing you may know, one thing that you know about Matthias is what? Is that in the book of Acts, in the first chapter or two, they're kind of trying to figure out what to do about Judas, who killed himself. So they're down from 12 to 11, and they feel the strong need to be back to 12. And so they cast lots and this, that, and the other, and they choose Matthias. Matthias becomes the new 12th apostle. Well, Judas Iscariot, by his name, you got to assume he was from the tribe of Judah. So this guy, Matthias, was also from the tribe of Judah. So that's interesting. This account of his life also tells us that he studied the law of God growing up under Saint Simeon, the God receiver. Remember that story in the gospel where Jesus is taken into the temple as a baby, and there's this elder named Simeon who takes him in his hands and said, "Lord, let us now thy servant depart in peace." Yeah, we got a whole feast on the calendar for that event. Well, Matthias studied under Simeon. Pretty cool. So I like sometimes these saint stories on the church calendar, hagiographies, sometimes they call them. Synaxarion, sometimes they call it. But they tell us things about Bible characters, that we just don't know. The Bible's only telling you certain things. It's not really trying to tell you life stories. So here we hear that Matthias studied under Simeon, which is pretty cool. And I don't know that we know, apart from this, that he was one of the 70. So what else does it tell us? It tells us that after the events in Jerusalem, he went to Antioch in Syria, got locked up in prison, and Andrew, the first called, one of the 12, came and got him out of prison. They journeyed to another city called Amasea, which is involved with Edessa, which is sometimes known as the first Christianized country or city-state. He was frequently subjected to deadly peril, but the Lord preserved him to preach the gospel. Once the pagans forced him to drink poison. He drank it. He remained unharmed. And he also healed other prisoners who had been blinded by this same poison. So he left the prison. The pagans didn't like this. They searched for him in vain, but he had become invisible to them. And another time, when the pagans had become enraged, intending to kill Matthias, the earth opened up and engulfed them. Kind of a fantastical story, but we do have a couple of stories in the Old Testament where that happened. So it can happen. Do you believe in miracles, charismatics? Last thing about Matthias. He had an interaction, face-to-face contest, you might say, with Ananias, the high priest, who basically condemned Christ, who hated Christ, this says. And he had gotten Apostle James killed, being flung from the heights of the temple. And now he ordered that the Apostle Matthias be arrested and brought for judgment before the Sanhedrin at Jerusalem. The impious Ananias uttered a speech in which he blasphemously slandered the Lord. And then Matthias got up using prophecies of the Old Testament. He demonstrated that Jesus Christ is the true God, the promised Messiah, the Son of God. After these words, the Apostle Matthias was sentenced to death by the Sanhedrin and stoned. So then they cut off his head. So that is Matthias, who you read about in the book of Acts, chapter 1, I think, maybe chapter 2, first part of chapter 2. And this is the rest of his life. So it's cool that we have a record of this in the lives of the saints. All right. Days of the week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. What is that? Let me do it again. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. 7 repeated again and again and again. Well, it's hard to say. I don't have enough information on why we do the 7 thing. Not all cultures do it, but a lot of cultures do it. And a lot of ancient cultures do it. And it certainly is influenced by the Hebrew Bible. Genesis chapter 1, first day, the second day, third day, 7 days. So it's a 7-day cycle. And the earliest kind of formation of these names of the 7 days of the week comes out of Babylon. And of course, Babylon had a pretty heavy Hebrew influence, starting with Daniel and the 3 Hebrew children and all that kind of stuff. And the Jews were exiled to Babylon, so there was a influence. Unfortunately, Babylon also influenced the Jews in Israel, but the Jews did influence Babylon, and so we have a 7-day week. But the names, there's 7 different names. What is going on here? Well, the first thing we can say is that they're all named after planets. And in the ancient world, especially in Babylon, which, we've got the Magi that came out of Babylon that found Christ in Bethlehem because they were studying the stars. Well, a big part of astronomy, whatever you want to call it, was the 7 wandering stars. The word planet means wanderer. So the wanderers, the planets, there's 7 of them, and they wander through the constellations in the sky. The constellations kind of stay fixed. They kind of move month to month, but the 7 wandering stars, they're called, they're moving all the time. Crazy, day to day, hour to hour. And there's 7 of them. Okay. And they are the sun, the moon, and the 5 visible planets. In the ancient days, not until 200 or 300 years ago, I think, Neptune, Uranus, Pluto, couldn't see them. So the 5 visible planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and the sun and moon, that makes 7. 7 wandering stars wandering through the zodiac. They sort of rule the zodiac because they wander through them and they move. So they're like even more important than the 12 constellations. And so you got the 7 wandering stars. And so that becomes a big deal. And so they name the 7 days of the week after these 7 wandering stars. Well, I don't have access to what exactly the Babylonians named them, but this tradition kept up in Rome. And Rome named them after Roman gods. But for our culture, English Empire, British Empire, 3 of them, the Roman names were kept, and then 4 of them came from Scandinavian Norse gods of Tolkien fame. Sunday is the sun. Monday is the moon. And then we have Saturday after Saturn, which was a Roman god. Okay, let's get into the other stuff. Tuesday is named after Tyr or Tyre, which was the Norse god of being a messenger, which corresponds to the Roman god Mars. But somehow Mars, the name, got lost out to Tyr, which became Tuesday. Wednesday comes from Woden. One of the great gods in the pantheon of the Norse is Woden or Odin. Woden's Day, Wednesday's Day, Wednesday. And Odin is the god of, let me have to pull this up here. He was the chief Norse god, equated with the Roman messenger god Mercury. So the messenger god, Mercury, and Odin and Woden, Wednesday. Thursday is named after Thor. That may be the one Roman god you have some familiarity with, but Thor is kind of the Christ figure, I think, or at least Jupiter, maybe God the Father. We'll get to that. But Thor, Thursday. And Friday is named after Frigg or Freya, which was the Norse equivalent of Venus, god of love and fertility and these sorts of things. So there you go. Monday, Moon. Tuesday, Tyre. Wednesday, Woden. Thursday, Thor. Friday, Freya, Frigga. Saturday, Saturn. That's how we get our names for the days of the week. Now, in my Revelation book, James Jordan kind of gets into this a little bit. The 7 wandering stars come up a few times. And so I encourage you to read this book because there's a lot of weird, interesting stuff like that. It's not astrology. It's just recognizing that the constellations and the 7 wandering stars and all that kind of stuff in the sky was very important to the ancient world. And a lot of the Old Testament and the book of Revelation can't be understood apart from it. But Revelation chapter 1, we have a vision of Jesus, and in his right hand, he has 7 stars. And Jordan talks about those 7 stars corresponding to the 7 wandering stars, the key stars, those 7 wandering planets. It also corresponds to the bishops of the church, the leaders in the church. We become stars. That's a whole another thing. Revelation's symbolism is multifaceted, so it's not just the 7 wandering planets. It's several things. And then in Revelation 15, an angel comes down, or a vision of Christ maybe, with 7 bowls. And these 7 bowls also correspond to the 7 wandering planets. And it's a key marker in the book to kind of divide it up by sections. But anyway, these 7 wandering stars, these planets, these days of the week, they show up at least 2 or 3 times in the book of Revelation, and other places in the golden lampstand, which is mentioned quite a bit in the book of Revelation, and is part of the holy place in the temple. And that golden lampstand has 7 lamps on it. So the 7 lamps correspond to the 7 wandering stars, indeed. And almost all ancient cultures and cultures today continue with this 7 days of the week, 7 cycle, and every day is named after these various gods of these certain things. So it just is what it is. Now, what I find fascinating about this is I'm surprised we're still using it. It just seems to me that after 2,000 years of Christian culture, we would have Christianized this stuff. But I'm not in charge. Now, I did do some research. I found out that there was a guy in Portugal who tried to do it, and they had, some limited success, but they didn't succeed. And then the Quakers in America, they tried to get rid of all this. They just changed it to first day, second day, third day, fourth day, etc., because they didn't like hearkening unto pagan gods in their daily, terminology, which that makes sense to me. I'd have made a good Quaker in that sense, but I'm not smarter than the church fathers. The church fathers, I guess, they decided to say, hey, this is just the terminology we've given. There's nothing inherently evil about terminology. And if you get into Tolkien and Lewis, I wrote a screenplay about J.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. If you get into Tolkien, a language genius, he talks about how basically all language stems from gods and goddesses. That could be another podcast, and I might do that. But in their wisdom, the church fathers said, no, we'll just keep this. This is just the lingo that people have been using for hundreds and thousands of years. So we're going to stick with it. So that is what we do. Even though we've been a Christianized culture in many ways for a couple thousand years, we keep these days named after pagan gods. And there hasn't been an attempt to like Christianize it, to me, like make like Thor's Day, Jesus Day, and Friday, instead of Frigga or Venus, make it Mary's Day. There hasn't been an attempt to make Tyre, the god of war, John the Baptist Day or Elijah Day. There just hasn't. They didn't go there. Now we've got an incredible church calendar with feasts for every one of those people I just named, and several feasts for a few of them. We got all sorts of things going on to honor the right people in the right way with the right emphasis, but they didn't feel the need to change the lingo of the days of the week. But they're fascinating. And the 7 wandering planets are fascinating. And we'll probably talk some more about that. I'm going to get into some more podcasts about how in the Old Testament, in the old times, the old world, the stars were very much a way of learning about God. It was one of the ways God brought revelation. Psalm 19, the heavens declare the glory of the glory of God. And we'll get into all that. But, you know, that's where we are. And the brightness of Jesus Christ and his revelation really causes the stars to go away. And that's pretty cool. Anything else I need to say about this? I think I've said it all. Hey, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It all has meaning. It all means something. And we do things for a reason. And Sunday, which obviously has allusions to Christ, in the New Testament really becomes called the Lord's Day. And the 7th day gets really eclipsed by the 8th day, which is Sunday. First day, obviously, but also the 8th day. So Jesus Christ is all in all. And so that's good to know when we're talking about this subject. Running for Congress, vote for me. Comments, questions, welcome. Like, subscribe, share. We have done us a podcast today, and it has been good. I'm glad we did it. Let's get the heck out of here. It's August the 9th, and I'm not going to tell you what day of the week it is. Ha ha ha.
Dean Arnold.
All right, guys. Have a good one.